In this demonstration, we're going to show you how to create a software RAID array on Windows. There are two basic kinds that you can create, a hardware array or a software array. Let's first talk about hardware arrays. To create one, you'll either use a RAID expansion board plugged into the motherboard, or you'll use a RAID controller that's been integrated on the motherboard. Both options work well and provide great performance, but they also cost a little more than software arrays. If you don't want to spend the money, use the software RAID array that's defined within Windows. That's what we're going to do here. Again, just keep in mind that software RAID arrays don't perform as well as their hardware counterparts. To start making one, I right-click Start and then select Disk Management. 4 additional disks were recently added to this computer, so when Disk Management first opens, it asks me if I want to initialize them. If we don't initialize the disks, Disk Manager won't be able to access them, so I need to click OK to make sure that they're initialized. Now let's expand the window and adjust the pane so you can see all the disks. Notice that Disk 0 is the drive that our Windows operating system was installed on, but disks 1 through 4 are listed as being unallocated. This means that no partitions have been created and they don't contain any data yet. Also notice that disks 1 through 4 are currently defined as basic disks. That's not going to work. If we want to create a software RAID array with disk management, we have to use dynamic disks. So let's go ahead and convert these from basic to dynamic. To do that, I right-click on Disk 1 and select Convert to Dynamic Disk. When I do, I'm given the option to convert either just Disk 1 or all the disks in the system. Let's go ahead and select all the unallocated disks and click OK. We now see that disks 1 through 4 have been changed from basic to dynamic. With that change made, we're ready to start creating our RAID arrays. Let's start by right-clicking Disk 1. When I do, I see that I can create either a spanned, a striped, or a mirrored volume. Of these options, only striping and mirroring are RAID implementations. Note that a mirrored volume is equivalent to RAID 1 and a striped volume is equivalent to RAID 0. There's also an option to create a RAID 5 array, but that's grayed out because you can only use that option on server versions of Windows. The reason a span volume isn't really a RAID array is because all it does is span its data across multiple hard disks. This means that there's really no redundancy and no performance improvement. When you use this option, you're just increasing the storage size. I want to first create a mirrored volume. A mirrored volume uses 2 hard disks and writes data to both of them at the same time, basically any time an operation occurs. So if one of those disks goes down, a redundant copy of the data is available on the other disk. To create this volume type, I select New Mirrored Volume and click Next to begin. Since I started by right-clicking on Disk 1, that one is automatically added to the selected column. To add the second disk to the array, I select Disk 2 and click Add. Notice that each of these disks is about 1 terabyte in size. The total volume size is only going to be about 1 terabyte after we're done as well. This might be confusing at first because you may be thinking, I'm using 2 disks and each one is about 1 terabyte, so shouldn't the total size of the volume be 2 terabytes? The answer is no, at least not with mirrored array. Remember that with mirroring, we're writing data redundantly on both disks at the same time, so the total volume size is equal to just the size of one of the disks in the array, which is still 1 terabyte. Click Next to continue. Since drive letters C and D have already been used on this system, I'll assign a drive letter of E and click Next. I also want to format this new volume using the NTFS file system, so I'll keep that default option, but I'll change the volume name to Mirrored. After the volume has been created, I want to format it so that I can use it. To speed this up, I select Perform a Quick Format, click Next, and then Finish. Now we have to wait while the new mirrored volume is formatted. All right, it's ready. When I open File Explorer and select this PC, we see that our new E drive, which we called Mirrored, is showing up like it should. Let's close File Explorer and create a striped volume. Before we do, it's important to understand that with striping, the data we create is broken up into chunks, and those chunks are written to both disks in the volume at the same time. So we're not creating redundant data like we did with mirroring. Instead, we're spreading that data equally across the two disks. The advantage to this is increased performance because we're writing with two different controllers at the same time. In other words, disk reads and writes take considerably less time than they do with a standard volume. On the other hand, the danger is that if one of our striped disks goes down, all the data on the volume will be lost, as half of the information will have been written to the failed disk. Just remember that this is the main downside to this approach. Okay, now to create a striped volume, I begin by right-clicking on disk 3, selecting New Striped Volume, and clicking Next. Like before, the disk I started on, disk 3, is automatically added to the selected column. So now all I need to do is select disk 4 and click Add. But notice that when we look at the volume size, it's now equal to the sum of the two disks, disk 3 and disk 4. With striped volumes, the total volume size is the size of both disks. To continue, I click Next and leave F as the assigned drive letter. After clicking Next, we again have the option to choose our file system, which I'll leave as NTFS, and I'll change the volume name to Striped. I'll select the option to perform a quick format again, click Next, and then Finish to end the process. All right, our striped volume has been created and formatted. When File Explorer is open and I select this PC, you see that we have the mirrored volume we created earlier and now also the striped volume. And that's all for this demonstration. In this demo, we talked about how to create software RAID arrays on Windows. We also went over the process for creating both mirrored and striped volumes.